Welcome everyone to the EED webinar number 25 on December 2nd. And our theme today is applying the 7 Hermetic Principles. And for some of you, perhaps these Hermetic Principles are new or you've never heard of them before. And maybe some of you have already heard of these through other channels, or maybe you've read some books that speak about these 7 Hermetic Principles. I came upon these Hermetic Principles quite a while after I created and developed EED. And when I read through them, and I'll give you a book, I'll recommend a good book for you to read through these Hermetic Principles in detail. I realized, oh wow, EED is right in parallel with these principles. Now, it's not because I was psychically connected or something to this. No, I based EED on natural cycles, natural principles, what I could observe naturally in nature and in human relationships. And I broke it down into the mechanics of what's happening. And this is what the 7 Hermetic Principles are doing as well. They're breaking down the mechanics of how natural things work. And it's calling them natural laws. Now, I'll speak about, okay, where did these Hermetic Principles come from shortly, but I've never really presented EED and the Hermetic Principles together, even though they've always been together. Some people say, oh, there's quite a deeper spiritual aspect to EED. Yes, there is. And I don't market that, all right? But I thought, why not for the end of the year, start to show the parallels where you can take EED, not just say on a level of working with relationships, working with transformation, whether that be in a personal or professional context, but how you can dive into deeper, let's say, esoteric meaning and esoteric experiences. And for those of you that have taken the modules, when we start dropping you into essence or into source, there is a real change in consciousness and a change in your whole experience of self and the world around you. So this webinar is meant to give you a basic presentation of these Hermetic Principles. We're scratching the surface on them, and then to show how they're paralleling with EED processes, all right? So yeah, we go into a little bit of metaphysical or esoteric realms here, but I do bring it back to earth into things that are practical and pragmatic for you as well. I am not claiming that EED is some magic formula or some magic thing or some mystery. What I really want to do is pull the curtain from mysteries. And that's why I developed EED, so that we could look at what might feel like a magical or random process and actually understand the mechanics of it and how it works, so it becomes more pragmatic, scientific, so that magic isn't so mysterious and magic becomes a practice, a discipline. Just for any magician, there is no magic to the trick. There is a rhyme and a reason and a method to the trick. To the audience, it looks magical, all right? So when using EED, the client might think, wow, this is a magical process, but for the practitioner, it is not magic. It's actually quite logical. And even intuition becomes quite logical. I know there's a mix of you, of those who have taken EED trainings and those of you who have not, but do you have any comments or right there on what I'm putting forth here? I'm frankly a little nervous to present these Hermetic Principles. I'm going to do my best. But yeah, any comments so far on what you're hearing here?
I'd love the metaphor of for the audience it's magic, but for the practitioners it's discipline. And you take discipline to break through your mind, your ego, your pathetic self, and all. So it all aligned with me. That's my comment.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm very much a believer in talent and inspiration, but also craft and technique. And that I learned a long time ago as I trained, you know, for international competitions in piano. I was a concert pianist. And so, I mean, there's one of the sources of where EED came from, was how I learned to be very, very, very disciplined and to work my craft. Right? All right, so here we go. What are we discovering? Well, as I said, I'm going to give you an overview, and it's a brief overview of the 7 Hermetic principles and how EED naturally incorporates them into your daily work, your daily life. Okay, that's both personally and professionally. So I'm going to take each principle, explain it briefly, and then I'm going to show how EED uses that or applies it. I know we could talk all day about each of these principles, so I'm going to be brief, basically, with them. Throughout, this will give you simple ways to strengthen a natural flow of creativity and heightened awareness, and that basically is what EED is all about, is increasing your awareness, taking you into different states of consciousness so that you can be more resilient and creative in your daily activities, your daily life, and in all your relationships. And that leads us to how to restore a state of balance within ourselves. Balance, EED is all about balance and counterbalancing. It doesn't mean make things static. It means actually the opposite. Everything is fluid and everything balances each other. And as we explore the Hermetic principles, we'll show you why that's important. So restoring a state of balance, resilience, and autonomy, meaning being self-regulating, self-governing, you can restore those states using the Hermetic principles and EED skills together. Let me know if there are questions along the way. So all of you have seen this before. For those watching the recording, maybe you have not. So what is emergent essence dynamics and what does it do? And this will be shed in a whole new light as we work through the Hermetic principles. The basic premise of emergent essence dynamics is that everything is in relationship. Everything. Nothing happens in the isolation or in a vacuum. So what we're looking at are the relationship patterns, and those patterns work in cycles, and those patterns are based on fractals, meaning everything is repeating from the smallest scale to the largest scale. And it is those patterns that are driving the person and the issue. So we're not interested in shifting a person or changing their mindset. We're not interested in changing a circumstance. What we're doing is we're changing their relationship to themselves and to their circumstances. And that is following a pattern. So how do we do this? So we're looking at the basic patterns driving human dynamics at the most fundamental level, okay? At source level, basically. And we'll talk about source in a bit. This applies to coaching, leadership, mediation, facilitation, healing. It changes the whole paradigm around these disciplines because we are looking at patterns and changing them at the root. So before we can do anything, we are focusing on resilience. Why? Because resilience opens the fluidity of a person. It opens their adaptability and flexibility. Otherwise, they will be rigid and transformation will not take place. We're looking at the relationship dynamics because it's through their actions and behaviors that we begin to see patterns. Then we can take those patterns and start shifting them in the resilient space. In fact, what happens is when we take a person, drop them into a resilient space, connect them to source level, we'll look at that shortly, those patterns naturally transmute or rearrange themselves. They clean themselves up. They purify themselves of distortions, and the person and multiple issues transform. Why multiple issues? Because these patterns are affecting everything. It's fractal. How was that for? How long did I do that in? 2-3 minutes? All right. Shall we move forward? Yeah. Okay. So what is the Kybalion? Well, it's a book and it describes these 7 Hermetic principles. Now, it's written by an alias, the 3 initiates. It's kind of like an alchemist's alias, let's say. But the author has been attributed to William Walker Atkinson, which was, and he lived in basically the early 20th century, all right? And I'll recommend, if you wish to read the Kybalion, that's highly recommended, look for the definitive edition by Philip Deslippe, okay? D-E-S-L-I-P-P-E. He gives a bit of background on who William Walker Atkinson was. He also gives a little bit of history behind the Kybalion. He also includes in this edition further notes by William Walker Atkinson. He was going to, well, I guess revise the Kybalion or do another version of it or expand on it, and never really quite did that. So, but he's including those notes from Atkinson that took the Kybalion a bit further. He actually was a lawyer and was very interested in esoteric principles. Now, where did he get the Kybalion from? So it's really describing the basic mechanics of alchemical processes through 7 principles, like 7 natural laws of the universe, all right? It really is an amalgamation of what a lot of esoteric literature describes, including Buddhism and other religions, on the nature of how creation works and the natural order of things, all right? And it is directly observable. So you can prove these out. I mean, I suggest go read the Kybalion and then go investigate life and see if it is unprovable or wrong. What I have found, and I would not be presenting this if I didn't stand behind it, is that everything works as basically described, and science is catching up to what it also describes. And I'll say EED came first, kind of stumbled on these things, but why? Because I was also basing EED on the things I learned through esoteric literature and metaphysics. And so it was just kind of saying the same thing the Kybalion was saying, but just from a different approach. And so this is now why I'm including it as recommended reading when you take the EED training. If you guys noticed, I would put that in your follow-up email, go read the Kybalion, right? So I really don't know how many of you did. So alchemy, a lot of people think of alchemy as, oh, that's how you change lead into gold. Well, not really. That's a metaphor or an allegory. And yeah, it's a little bit of a red herring to follow alchemy thinking, yeah, we can, change metals, change the state of metals. Yes, you can. You can also change the state of plant substances to create medicinal products. That's called spagyrics. But what alchemy is truly about is the transmutation of the human being, becoming the exalted human being, the highest version of ourself. And that is through a process of deconstruction, purification, and then reconstruction or reassembly. And this is what you would do with elements like metals or plants. It's all about breaking things down to its purest essence and then having it rearrange itself. That's what transmutation means. And this is exactly what EED is doing and what I've described in many, many, many of the webinars, all right? So here's another way to look at transmutation. I prefer the word transmutation rather than transformation because transmutation means nothing is added or deleted. It is purified and rearranged, right? So EED processes, skills, techniques, they parallel and coincide with these Hermetic principles. So if you look at the Hermetic principles, that helps you understand EED better. And if you look at EED, it gives you deeper layers to the Hermetic principles. Go ahead, Benjamin. Yes, question.
I'm curious here. It seems to me at the outset that this is the transmutation is an active process I facilitate.
Yeah,
but
that's what you're facilitating, is a transmutation.
Which parts may be even passive? So is it really a real active process, or is it just a change in the perception and then I see how the stuff is transmuted by itself or so?
the process is going to work on its own. You're guiding it or giving it parameters or poking it along, okay? That's why I don't like to use the word transformation sometimes, because we feel like we have to manipulate the transformation, right? Whereas a transmutation is really, the process is quite natural. It's going to work on its own. You're giving it clear parameters and guidelines to stay pure and to be efficient, all right? So that it can be clean and accelerated and efficient, let's say. If it is not guided, it may take longer, it might be sloppy, it might have distortions, all right? So, which is also why we demand that EED practitioners, you do the work on yourself, so you are coming from a clean and pure place, and we guide you on how to do that during the trainings. What is it to stay in that clean, pure place? Coaching describes that clean, pure place by, when they used to say the coach is invisible, what they really meant was there's non-interference, but you do have influence. So you have to carefully choose what am I influencing? What's my function here? All right, without interfering in the client's own process themselves. They are the ones who are the master of their process. You're providing the parameters to guide them through it, okay? Without sticking your fingers in the pie. And so that's a very strange thing for some people to understand. How do I have influence but non-interference at the same time, all right? This is where understanding alchemical processes helps, all right?
I have a question. So
yeah,
it's
go
like,
ahead, Yusuf.
So it's like being a catalyst. So it's like being a facilitator. Transmutation is a natural way of going things. Transformation is like you push and direct. So
you're directing, conducting. Yeah. Another
agenda. Being you have an agenda for transformation, because you have an idea, you have the request from the client, but you have an agenda. Okay, blah blah blah. But transmutation and what you just said now is just being a catalyst, facilitator for nature to take its course.
For nature, yeah, and so that the transmutation is organic and natural
within.
It's not artificial or imposed upon artificially. So yeah, you're the catalyst and the container.
Yeah,
so
no pushing, just allowing to break all the space, you mean?
Yeah.
As a coach, my question now as a coach, not as a client.
And this is important. The point of being a catalyst and a container, that actually relates back to the 7th Hermetic principle, which is based upon masculine and feminine energies, where feminine is receptive, like a container, and masculine is force and structure, ascending energy, whereas feminine is a receiving energy. We'll talk about that when we get to the principles here.
One more. As a container, you see things rise and you see things collapse and go down, but you're just a container. You don't do anything. You just allow it.
You're allowing it, and then containing it so that it can have its laboratory or space to do its work, so to speak. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the first principle. This is the principle of mentalism. So the all is mind. That means the universe is mental, not mental crazy. You're so mental. No, it's what this means is for everything that is manifested, it came from an idea first. So everything comes from the conception of an idea. All right, so this works with law of attraction, with intentional focus, which the last webinar was about the alchemical nature of law of attraction. So everything is conceived in the mind. What that also means is when we move into source or all potential, that means everything is possible. Everything has potential to be true, but it's in concept or idea form only. It must then get expressed or manifested. So what you're seeing around you everything is the product of an idea. Where does transformation take place? Not from changing the concrete product. It is from transmuting or transforming the idea itself, the source mind, all right? So also think of universe as being, in a way, holographic or influenced. It's a co-creative universe, and it's really working on that subtle level of thought. Thoughts influence the feelings and behaviors and actions. And so when we're coming from the level of thought, that is the most subtle place to make transformation, but it's also the easiest. But because thought is so transitory, we have to be very disciplined to capture and harness our thoughts and focus them. Any comments or questions there on what I'm putting forward here? Okay, so this then sheds light on why do I keep presenting this triangle of story, game, dream, source, meaning levels of truth or ways of being in relationship. So source would be the all, what the Hermetic Principles describe as the all. The all is mind. This is the unified field, all right? Source, essence, everything before expression, the all potential. And so what we're doing through EED processes is we're dropping the client, the group, the relationship into this source level. This is where the ego construct disappears and we are just pure essence in an unconditional state, permanent and timeless, all right? Then we can reconstruct into gradually taking on a more crystallized point of view. Story is a singular point of view. It's one piece of the pie, one version of the truth. When we put two people in relationship, they are in opposition, each with their own truth. When they drop into dream, they are open to each other's truths and there can be a fluid exchange. This is an expanded truth. And then they'll drop their bubble altogether and they move into essence, which is a unity consciousness. So here is where transformation actually, or transmutation begins, is from source, all right? So we need, this is the deconstruction process. Deconstructing story, game, dream, dropping into source. This is a purification process to create a connection to the source, drop away the egoic distortions. Then we reconstruct from source back into dream game, and it is a new story, a new script, a new reality. Why? Because we rearranged the mind. So we move from conception into transition. This is a level of being in flux, being fluid. Then we take action in relationship based on what's coming from source and dream, and that crystallizes into a reality or a new narrative. So that's a new way to present this pyramid. Any comments, questions here? Either what's clear or confusing. Yeah, go ahead, Yusuf.
Right. So we bring it down to the source and we bring it up to a new story. But a story criteria and story level, it will still be a story. It will have
still a story. Yeah.
Later on. It's better story, but it will have malfunction later.
Well, let's say it's a more congruent and aligned story. It's a story aligned with source as opposed to disconnected, all right? Because often we disconnect ourselves from source. EED is plugging the person back into their own internal source. That's
it's a pure
and that's what I mean by the purification.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Yusuf.
It's a pure story. It's a pure ego. It's a purer.
More pure. When it's just coming from game level, we'll show you this later, and it's been in past webinars. If we're disconnected from source, then I have to seek some other source, or I have to be the God of my world and myself, which means I'm playing two games. I need to be in control and I need to prove that I exist, meaning I need validation. So I need validation to prove I exist, meaning I need to be acknowledged, I need to be loved, I need to be needed. And then I need to make sure that I will exist, and that is about control, safety, security. All right? But that is coming from non-resilience. Why is it not resilient? Because it is not plugged in to the unified source, the sense of permanence and timelessness. Right? So we're really opening a bridge. And I'll tell you, people's ethics and morals change when they enter this unity consciousness. All right? Why? I don't need to control you if we're unified. I don't need to be validated by you if we are unified. How can I kill you if we are unified? Why would I want to? Because I'm affecting myself just as much as I'm affecting you. Do you understand? In a closed bubble, I'll kill everyone because they're all a threat. Do you understand? In a open bubble or no bubble world, we're all unified. And why would we want to go back to the bubble? Because we're all unique expressions of the same source. Okay, it's like the diamond with a million facets. Okay, how you guys doing with this? Okay,
The bubble is a function.
it's a yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's a function because we do live in a crystallized concrete material world. And the point of this is we're bringing source into expression. Okay.
To open the bubble.
Yeah. Why? Well, that will come later with the next principles as well. Okay. So that's one thing. So this is why we work with the embodiment loop. What we're taking, like say from source into full expression, we have this 4-phase loop, which follows the creative cycle. We move from idea, that's a spark. And this is every moment where we build impulses, all right? We take an idea, we connect with it so that it can start designing itself, so to speak, expanding itself. Then it goes into further expansion, voicing itself, constructing itself to have a full realization or a full product. So in every moment, there's an energetic spark. We want to create relationship with it, connect with it. Then we can find out what it is, what it's useful for, and then we can embody it, anchor it, and apply it. All right? So from design thinking, you have idea, designing the blueprint, constructing, and then you have the finished product. It's the same thing, 4 phases. Again, where did it all come from? The all. The all is mind. Everything begins with an idea, the spark of an idea. And then we need to string it out into its fullest realization. So this is what we're constantly doing in EED, is we're taking sparks, ideas, and bringing them into full realization. That's what makes the change process organic, right?
Just to add here, if I may.
What was that, Benjamin?
Can you hear me? Is it
Yeah, but I only heard half a sentence. Yeah.
Sorry. Was just asking to add here something here. So the idea of faith, from my understanding, is there is some manifestation I'm becoming aware of, which manifests, but there's not really the connection yet. So I travel it back to the source.
Yes.
And so that would be 2. Once I reach there, I see the connection between myself, so it's the embodied part, and the source. From that, I travel to from the source back. So from an established relationship from myself to the source, I travel somewhere else to construct. But the difference is just a subtle difference compared to the original idea sphere. I do have the connection. I'm constructing from the connection of. I'm not.
That's the difference right there. Yeah.
And that's, I feel, really the subtleness here. What is fake source? It's
right.
very subtle. So it might seem just about to be the same stuff, but it isn't if it's not connected. So it's just minute difference, and it's hard to spot here. So that's the risky part, I feel.
Right. Well, and this embodiment loop is describing what we mean by emergent essence dynamics. What is emerging now? We're constantly working in the present moment. Always something is bubbling up from the source, from the all, okay? And if we don't guide it, it can distort, it can disconnect, it can break off. It can seek a fake external source as opposed to remain connected to the pure source from within the person, all right? And you also described, yes, we can work backwards through the loop to take the full expression of something and break it down into its origin, taking the full expression, say an emotional expression of something or a physical expression, and find its original intention or purest intention. That means it's another way of burning off distortions. You can see angry behavior and distill it down into its purest original intention, which is benevolent. But here it might look mean, hateful, malevolent, but it's only because it got distorted and disconnected, all right? So we can take everything that is being expressed and realign it to source. So we can move two ways through this embodiment loop, okay? I didn't intend to talk too much about working backwards, but when we work backwards, we take something to its origin. When we move this way, counterclockwise, we open a spark from origin and bring it to its fullest realization, fullest expression. That's what keeps the transmutation process organic, because as people move through a change process, they experience many impulses, all right? Okay, let's see what else I got here. Yeah, so any further questions on that? The first principle, the all is mind, the universe is mental. Everything springs from source, springs from an idea. Now we have the principle of correspondence. What is this? As above, so below. As below, so above. Well, what is that talking about? Everything is fractal. Everything is a reflection from the large scale to the small scale, from the microcosm to the macrocosm. Everything is following similar patterns, all right? And you'll see this in nature, all right? So what you'll see is, like, look at all these fractals, snowflakes, spirals, coastlines, galaxies, weather systems, bronchial tubes to the leaves and branches of a tree. These are all following similar patterns, the way plants grow according to Fibonacci sequences, right? The way spirals extend out according to Fibonacci sequences. This is the Mandelbrot set. This is a fractal that describes how coastlines are formed, all right? Here's a galaxy, here's a hurricane, and here's a seashell. All right, so all of these self-similar patterns are everywhere. Why? Well, if you have intelligent design of a reality, why not be very efficient and use economy of material? And therefore, if the thought changes, the thought affects everything. That enables a ripple effect. All right, again, so if we recognize fractal processes, there is such an efficiency to transmutation and transformation. Any comments there? So what is a fractal? Fractal is a simple pattern that repeats itself on every scale from small to large, ad infinitum, all right? So here's a basic triangle. Now, we can create a fractal pattern. We can put triangles within triangles, within triangles, within triangles, and within triangles, all right? And we can take the simple, make it very complex, and then take what's complex and make it very simple. So what looks infinitely complex is actually very simple when you break it down to its core fractal structure. And this is what we're doing in EED all the time. You might work with a team or with a relationship, and they have very complex issues and stories, but as you work their actions and behaviors, you start to see patterns, and you start to see repeating patterns and self-similar patterns, so that you don't have to pay attention to all these story details. You can move it down into source, which is what's the core level pattern here? What's the core level issue? What's the root that's driving everything? All right, so this is what we're doing with EED. An EED model itself is fractal in nature. I'm going to show you the inner loops. I showed you the embodiment loop. We work with relationship dynamics, even the way we structure our sessions with session architecture, even the way we work through a reconciliation process. Everything follows these patterns, so you can never get lost. That's A. B, you can start from anywhere. And see, you can move through the model from complexity to simplicity back to complexity. But you always have a map, and it's actually quite a simple map. At first, you might think, oh my God, how do all these dots connect? But the more you look at this, the more you practice it, the more you study it, the more you realize there's actually one or two or three things I'm only doing when I'm working this transmutation process, or when I'm working with the EED skills. And what does that give you? Creativity, flexibility, and freedom. And it makes you very, very, very sharp. I know when I'm facilitating, I can run into very complex situations, but when I keep these processes in mind, I can go right to the center of the storm where it's very calm. I still might not know what to do next, but I have places to go. And I'm not freaked out. I'm not overwhelmed, so to speak. Even though I am seemingly overwhelmed, maybe I'm discouraged, maybe I'm frustrated, but I still have my footing in something. Why? Because nothing is really, really, really complex. What we're doing in EED is saying we're taking complexity, moving it into simplicity, but also allowing it to be complex. We're allowing it to reveal what are the simple interconnected patterns. This is why we don't pay attention to language, words. We're looking more at the actions and behaviors, because that's the direct channel to patterns. Any comments here? Let me know if that sounds confusing, or if it sounds quite clear or fascinating, or yeah, all right. Okay. The principle of vibration. This is the third principle. So nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. You may look at your chair or your table and you think, well, that's static. Well, no, when you break it down to its atoms, atoms are constantly vibrating. They're spinning, they're moving, all right? Everything is in a vibration. Everything is in a frequency, all right? And on the larger scale, everything is constant motion, all right? And we'll look at that when we get into the next principle on polarity. So even in a session with a client, they are attuned to certain frequencies, physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. They are vibrating at different levels, okay? And what we're doing with EED is we're attuning those vibrations. The further they drop into source, the more of a pure vibration they get themselves into. And we've done brainwave tests on this, and we've shown significant changes in the brain waves, all right? So, one of the main things we teach, especially right from module 1, is how do you access source energy or vital energy and then start circulating that through your system. And what that does is it does change your rate of vibration of the body, but it also of your mental state. And you get into expanded states of consciousness. When you are connected into source, the ego is not so much in control anymore. It's not desperately clinging. And you're able to have far more fluid and creative thinking, far more resilient behavior, all right? So what we're always looking for is, when we're dropping somebody into source, is to anchor them there through a body center. It gives them a sensation, and there's a particular quality they're connected to. That could be peace, love, unity, limitlessness. There's 10 essential qualities, but there's 4. Those are the 4 main ones. All right. This is when we're dropping them into source. All right. And then from there, we can build them back into action, maintaining that connection to source. This kind of energy is self-generating, self-perpetuating, and unconditional, meaning it is inexhaustible. There's no condition on it where they have to cling and say, oh, I'm in my strength. But no, it's an inexhaustible flow of energy and strength. When people talk about being creative and resourceful, this is what they mean is you are in a permanent, timeless, unconditional space where you have an inexhaustible flow of energy. All right. We'll go further. We'll start circulating that through the body, center to the feet, up to the head, and all through. But then we'll expand it to the earth and the sky. Why would we do that? Because that puts them in an extended relationship with their world. And what that does is it enables them to get an even larger flow, or an expanded flow of energy, where they can take in energies of the earth, take it into themselves, give the excess out there to the sky, to the universe, receive inspirations, and then let go of anything left over, meaning toxins, fears, etc., and let that go into the earth. So what this does, this is what helps keep a person in a more purified state, a cleaner state, where they're connected to source, they're connected to earth, and they're connected to the universe around them. That enables them to tap into a unity consciousness, a co-creative consciousness, and then they can create relationships from there. And that's what creates a resilient relationship. Now, that might seem all fantastical and strange, or is it? I know some of you have taken the courses. We've walked you through these processes. Have you experienced this? Or am I just giving a bunch of hullabaloo here? Comments?
Comment, yes. Not directly to the question.
Okay, what's the comment?
It just sounded to me like you used to cling to something. This way is, oh, I realize if I cling to it, I'm not receptive. So if I'm putting myself in a state where I release the need of, I need to cling to that, I become receptive, and then I allow the energy to flow in. But it's
you become less sticky, so to speak. You're less attached.
So I'm blocking myself, basically. And the usual pattern. If I see this pattern, it's just releasing that and enabling yourself to be receptive for the flow. And that's not that's just the antithesis of the stickiness.
Let's not make this magical and mystical. Let's just say this is basic creative flow. All right. Yusuf, you had something to add.
Yes. To keep the flow going. So when the stickiness comes, it's limitless. So it's not the essence, it's the pathetic. So it's like a good radar to put, or good notification to have, like automatic. Like always keep your pathetic be watched by your essence if you can.
I'll show briefly resilient and pathetic self a bit later for anyone that's like, what's he talking about, pathetic? But it's okay.
Okay.
But no, true. We don't. So everyone has moments of peace. Everyone has moments of love, moments of unity, moments of limitlessness. Limitless might mean, oh, everything is possible. Okay, limitless creativity. But there's degrees of how pure is that? because this could be conditional peace, conditional love, conditional unity, conditional limitlessness. I'm only limitless when. I'm only experiencing love when or if, right? I'm only experiencing peace when or if. Those are conditions. What we're doing is we're taking somebody, we're peeling away all those conditions. And there's ways to do it. And this is why we take the training. It's like, how do you peel that stuff away? So they'll drop into a place of no conditions necessary. I just am love, or I just am peace, or I am limitlessness. And from there, they're at a source level. Then we can rebuild where they can start taking action and maintain that small thread of connection. Okay, that's where the resilience comes from. That's where the creativity comes from. That's where the resourcefulness comes from. And we're working on opening that flow. So there is a free flow of energy, as opposed to, like Benjamin was saying, I stop myself, I cling or I attach. All right, because as soon as we stop the flow, we're closing that bubble again. Like what I showed you, we're at the top of the pyramid with a rigid bubble. We're looking at having a facility to open and close the bubble at will. All right.
It really is near to close to the image of, if you just imagine a stream of water flowing through you all the time, and you try to keep a specific amount of water. This prevents the flow to happen.
That's right. And so, I have a limit. I'm a container or a vessel, you know, where the water can flow through. Now, if I decide I own this water, so now I'm going to close it off. My cup is full. Got to keep it. Well, that water will start to go stale. It'll start to, let's say, fester, ferment, become toxic. Why? Because it's not moving. It turns into a swamp, right? We want a clean flow, right?
So the information is raised not in the manifestation, the material itself. Instead, it's a movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the energy pattern. If it's not moving, what's the energy basically?
That's right. So remember, everything is vibration. It's constantly vibrating. It doesn't stop. All right. And when we look at the later, I think it's the fifth one, everything is in constant motion, the fifth principle. So here's another way to work with the balancing of the energies, or attunement of the energies, is through this focus loop. We're constantly in a session balancing awareness and experience together. Why? Because that creates congruency, and that opens the channel for energies to flow. All right. What I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm doing, what I'm saying, how I'm acting, behaving is all in line. And that's what's going to allow this free flow of energy. There will be no blocks or stops. All right. So what we're doing at the very basic level is just balancing what's going on from the neck up with the neck down. For every new idea, there's a body reaction and a feeling, an emotional reaction there. And for every emotion or energy that we experience or sensation, that produces new ideas as well. So if I've got an angry body posture, well, what's the feeling that matches it? What's the thought that matches it? That has somebody be more congruent, which has them appear to be more authentic. But when you connect that back to source, now they are being authentic because they are acting and behaving according to origin, according to source. They're an expression of the origin, all right? And it needs to be clean. This is why it's very important to constantly balance awareness and experience every single moment, okay? This is a constant in the model of EED. And that's a constant you can do within yourself. All right. Now, the principle of polarity. We're coming up to the top of the hour, so if anyone needs to drop out, you feel free, and otherwise you can stay. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are actually the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes will meet, and all truths are but half-truths. Why? Because you have a half-truth and a half-truth working in opposites. So all paradoxes may be reconciled at various levels, all right? I'm adding that, at various levels. Any thoughts on that? Any comments? Does that sound clear, or is it a little bit confusing? I know for those of you that took module 2, you know, it's all about teaching polarity in module 2. So
I was reading, I was reading last time from some yogi. His name is Sri Anandamurti, and he was saying similar to that. He was saying, no good, no bad, just God.
Yeah, okay.
So it's in the way it's the same. If you want to take the spiritual first, but it's click.
Our world is based upon duality, opposites. The world of essence is unity. But it's all potential. In order to express the all potential, everything splits into its opposites, all right? So it would be nice if we all lived at the level of essence, but we don't. When we're physically expressing the all potential, we are moving into a world of opposites and duality. That is the nature of our world. Now, this is what we mean by the level of game and dream. In game, those opposites are oppositional. They're in conflict. They're fighting. One needs to be more true than the other. On dream, we drop, and the opposites are still there, but they're complementary. They're working in a holistic fashion together, all right? On the level of source, opposites are reconciled, and there is no more paradox, all right? So let's look at polarity very simply. Let's take a polarity of hot and cold. Here we have two opposites, okay? We have the hot world, we have the cold world. But something holds them together. What are both hot and cold expressing? Temperature. These are degrees of temperature. You could say cold is the absence of heat, or you could say heat is the absence of cold. It doesn't matter. They're all together, they're there to express temperature. Energy felt through temperature, all right? Now, this is what it looks like on a linear level, like game level, okay, or dream level. But at the level of essence, it's actually a circle. There's temperature. All temperatures coexisting at once. And then if we decide, let's cut that circle at a point, now you're going to have the extremes of hot and cold coexisting in the same place. And then imagine, now take that circle and spread it into a line, okay? So really what we're doing in our world, as we move back and forth between extremes, we're trying to represent the whole circle at once. But because we live in a linear, time-segmented world based on opposites, we can only experience 1 degree of temperature at a time. In essence, the world of essence, which we do not live in, but we can access, all temperatures coexist because it is a timeless realm. Does this make sense? All potential is also timeless. Okay. So in essence, hot and cold really don't exist. It's an illusion, but it is a reality in a dualistic world, okay? But it doesn't mean one is better than the other. So how does that affect human behavior, polarities? Well, we're always faced with emptiness and fullness. We have a pursuit to move away from emptiness towards fullness, meaning we want to move from danger into safety. That is human nature. So we'll flee danger in search of safety. Okay, and we can call danger, safety, anything, but let's use an example of like, I don't want to work, I want to rest. Okay, I've been having like busy last 6 months. I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, can't work anymore, need to rest. Okay, so if you throw one more assignment at me, I'm gonna flee. Okay, I'm in search of a vacation, a good sleep. Okay, relaxing, I just want to watch Netflix, thank you. Okay. But sometimes life pushes us the other way. It pushes against that natural desire into safety. Life can push us back into danger. Well, no time to rest. You know, we got deadlines, work, you want to make an income, but I'm going to cling. I'll procrastinate. I'm not going to work. I'm going to pretend. I'm going to try and rest until, you know, the deadline shows up and I got to work, but I'm going to fight myself. Oh my God, I can't do it. Right? And so we'll go through these 4 classic behaviors of flee, search, cling, and fight. All in reaction to that emptiness or danger. Okay, so that is a fundamental behavior of polarity. There's where we're moving between 2 opposites. All right. This we learned extensively in module 2. This brings us to the principle of rhythm. So questions or comments there? Or is this helping to make sense? This is what's going on in our mind, or this is how our ego behaves, or how our reptilian brain behaves. This is how we're behaving when we are not connected to resilience. This is when we're operating on game level, okay? And this is normal. We all do this, all right? So the principle of rhythm means everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. Notice the opposites: out, in, rise, fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. So everything is moving between the opposites and it never stops. Also, the measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. So everything counterbalances and compensates itself, all right? Rhythm compensates. It's never going to favor one side or the other. You might favor one side or the other. Life does not. Life is impersonal in that way. And too bad if you think life doesn't care about me. No, life is functioning. What do you think of that?
Yeah, they cling. The pendulum is just approaching to the other side. I'm clinging to it. Gravity is pulling into the other direction. So
that's right. It's like, I'm sorry, but I don't like gravity. So I'm going to jump. And God damn it, gravity still pulls me down to the ground.
I like it so much here. I don't want to lose it.
Yes.
Comfort zone, fighting life.
Yes. So life does not take our personal preferences, biases, our niceties into consideration. There are just natural laws of we need to swing from one opposite to another and constantly counterbalance. So that's what we're working with. Our ego favors one end over another. It'll cling, or it'll run away, or it'll search, or it'll fight, okay? But life is essential. Neither pole is better than the other, okay? But our ego loves preferences. So our ego is constantly moving from emptiness to fullness. And fullness is driven by the emptiness, meaning our fulfillment is defined by the emptiness. This is when we're, again, at the game level. All right? When we're at essential level, the source, there is no such thing as emptiness, fullness, because both are the same. Remember opposites, okay? Think of essence as a white page. It could be everything or nothing. Remember, white light contains all colors, or white light could be blankness, nothingness. It's both, all right? So this creates a constant movement. Well, how does that happen? Again, in our human behavior or in our heads. So here we go. We actually have a polarity of voices, 2 opposing voices, like an angel and a devil, and we're caught in between. So again, one voice is moving from emptiness to to fullness, from danger to safety. So this voice says, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, work is bad. Therefore, I need to flee that in search of a vacation. I need to rest. And I need a good 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years of rest. I don't want to get out of bed for the next 2 years. Okay, I'm so exhausted. And isn't it wonderful to just lay in bed and not get dressed for days and days and days? Then another voice will pop in and it'll say, wait a minute, how are you going to pay those bills? You can't stay in bed forever. You're lazy. You're non-productive. You need to make a living. It is dangerous to rest. You must work. That's what keeps you safe and secure, because you're making an income. You have connections with people. You're busy. You're productive. You're active. Okay? And then it's fleeing what was fulfilling has now become dangerous. It flees that in search of this other fulfillment, which to voice one says, no, 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 that's dangerous. If we connect with too many people and have too many assignments, then I'm going to be overwhelmed and I'm going to have no time for myself. I'm going to get exhausted and burnt out again. We need to flee that. So you've got two monkeys on the vine saying, which way are we going to swing? And they're both fighting. Okay, I need to swing this way. No, this way. So when one voice is dominant, okay, moving towards its safety, it's threatening the other voice because it's moving the other voice into danger. And so then we're having an inner control battle within ourselves, the battle between one opposite or the other. And this again is our focus in module 2. So that's what's called the double bind. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. We're trying to be fulfilled in work and rest at the same time, but they're on two opposites of the spectrum. And this is what actually guarantees constant motion. That's the point. This is why I'm bringing this up here. There is constant motion. We never, ever freeze in the middle. That is an illusion. Oh, I'm in a balanced state. I'm in a balanced state between work and rest. No, actually, you're vibrating like this. A little bit of work, a little bit of rest, a little bit of work, a little bit of rest. Yeah, go ahead, Yusuf.
Roy, you just described my life for the last couple of months. How can I find this in my voice too?
Yes. Yes.
Please. No, I'm okay. I'm convinced with voice too, but I need to find the bliss. So I was thinking to myself, maybe I can do this. What if I break my old pattern? You know.
Look, this is the reason we drop into source, into those permanent, timeless qualities that have nothing to do with ego, because that allows you to drop into this emptiness. Okay.
I don't want to go there.
Your ego doesn't want to go there.
It's my desk door.
Yeah, that's right.
This red circle work, it's my desk door. I don't want to go there.
So part of what we're doing in EED is we're working backwards through that polarity to put you in relationship with this from a resilient place. So you drop in and you neutralize all the resistances. You drop into source and you realize, oh, actually, work is work, rest is rest. I don't have to color it red or green. I have freedom of movement. When you have autonomy, resilience and autonomy, you have freedom of movement on the polarity. It's neither red nor green. You can decide, I'm going to rest, I'm going to work, I'm going to rest. And then you just counterbalance yourself. Is that making sense?
What tool should I use? A desire, a pleasure?
I know. Now you're asking, how do I do this?
No, the tool.
It has, well, again, desire, pleasure. Well, what is that connected to? Source or not source? Everything, again, it's like, we have so many false sources that can drive the desire, drive the pleasure, drive the ethic, right? So at its most basic, we're just dropping into source, getting that vertical loop going, and then we can start rebuilding from there. And then, yes, in module 2, we take you through the polarity, through the emptiness, okay? And we drop into source that way. Module 3, you can rebuild and start reconciling the red and the green together. In the conflict course, we reconcile the red and the green together.
Yeah.
So, but what's the basic fractal? Connect to source. Am I connected or not connected to source? It really comes back to that. And one basic test is what cannot be taken away? What is permanent and timeless that cannot be taken away? The way to test it is take it away. Because then we'll see if you're clinging or not. And if you're clinging, then it's conditional.
Yeah.
Okay. How you guys doing? Okay. So another way to look at this is the pathetic self is driven by the polarities. Yusuf had mentioned that before. Why? Because there's a disconnect from source. Therefore, it's trying to control itself. It's trying to imitate essence, to be that whole spectrum. And it's constantly moving into the green because it wants to run away from this gap, this emptiness. It does not see emptiness as everythingness. It sees emptiness as death and annihilation, okay? The resilient self is also an expression of source, but it is connected, it's plugged in, all right? Therefore, it has a free flow. It can still move through polarities, but it's constantly connected by source, with source. It is not threatened by that gap because really it doesn't see the gap as emptiness, all right? That's a very simplistic way of putting it. So both are oriented towards action. This is us on the game level or the dream level. We're oriented towards action. When we're playing games, we're coming from pathetic self. When we're in the dream level, we're coming from resilient self. Meaning opposites are complementary here. Opposites for the pathetic self are threatening. All right, oppositional. Why? Pathetic self is always asking itself, am I okay? Am I okay? Am I okay? And it's looking for an external source. It wants to plug in, all right? But it wants to plug in somewhere outside of itself. It's seeking a source of power, okay? Through validation or control. Those are the two basic games it's playing. Resilient self is constantly saying, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm all good. I'm okay. Why? Because it has a foundation plugged into its own internal source. The source doesn't exist outside of itself. So it never needs to question, am I okay? I just am. And so all the actions it takes, it's an expression of source. It's thriving, it's creating from source. I could take the same action, build a business or build a business. Here, I build a business because I can, I want to, I've decided. Here, I'm building a business because I must, I need to. Otherwise, all right? It's conditional.
This slide answer me. Now I understand my question from this slide.
So when you say, well, how do I change that polarity? Well, get in relationship with the emptiness. The pathetic self's going to freak out, but reorient yourself towards the resilient self. Plug yourself into source. Then you can start addressing that gap. All right. It's the resilient self that can move through the gap. Pathetic self won't. But why do we need a pathetic self then? Here's another duality that we have, right? Opposites. Disconnected, connected, disconnected, connected. Well, the pathetic self it's so not okay that it's going to identify every crack in the wall. It's going to see every possible problem, all right? Resilient self doesn't see problems because it's okay with everything. So it doesn't have to create. It's so creative, it doesn't have to create. All right. So there's a danger that resilient self will just drop back into essence, which is inertia, all potential. But the resilient self is motivated into action. It needs a place to go. Pathetic self will tell it where to go. Look, there's a crack in the wall. Do something about it. Resilient self says, okay, I possess all the creativity in the world. Fine, I'll do something about it. Gives me a reason to create. The pathetic self gives the resilient self a reason to create. Then the resilient self can let the pathetic self do its proper function, which is identify the cracks. The pathetic self, when it's disconnected from the resilient self and source, it thinks it has to address all those cracks, and it goes more and more into freak out mode because it compounds the problem. Okay, so they balance each other. There is a symbiotic relationship between the two. And that's basically what we're working with. Right? Our game self and our dream self. I know some of you have heard this before, but yeah, go ahead, Yusuf.
The overthinking about the same topic and make it bigger is the pathetic self.
Yep, because it's obsessed with pathology and strategizing, and it can paralyze itself in that. No action.
And finding the things not working and finding all the negative shit.
That's right. Yeah. It's just gonna keep finding more cracks and gaps and gaps and cracks and get more and more threatened. Yes. Benjamin.
I feel the pathetic self appears to me to be like a dealer promising some stuff. If you do that here, you will be free. So yeah, that's a deal.
It's a dealer, I know, and it's constantly feeding drugs, and
it's very convincing.
Yeah, well, it's addictive. It is very addictive. Yeah. Why? Because it possesses no internal connection. Again, it's driven by that disconnect. That's why it's addictive. Because it's trying to fill that void.
But actually, the action of filling it is making it worse.
That's right.
So if you, but the basic assumption isn't question, and that's the reason why for the addiction, basically.
That's right. I shoot myself up with this today, and then I say, "Am I okay now? Am I still okay?" Right? And I need a little more. Shoot me up with some more. Am I okay? Am I okay? So I think I'm okay, but am I okay? Ooh.
If you bust this basic assumption, so if you question that and this illusion cracks.
Yeah, the reason it's not okay is because this gap keeps poking it from behind. It feels that little poke, gap. What that really is, though, is an invitation to join essence, but it sees it as a threat. I went through that gap once, I'm not going again. Right? I'm looking forward, okay? It will not look behind itself. It's another way to think about it. That's why it won't go through the gap. So it feels this constant threat of annihilation underneath itself. Okay.
So bottomless pit, feed me so I exist, feed me more, feed me more.
Yep, that's right. Now, oh, was there something else, Alina, or somebody were you trying to come in?
Yeah, it was me, basically. For the pathetic self, there is some identification issue here. So I assume myself to be that disconnected pathetic self. Otherwise, it would not affect me, right?
Yeah, right. Well, this is a vehicle of motion. This is not necessarily a vehicle of motion. Why? Because it can go back into inertia. So this is what keeps things moving. Remember that double bind. The pathetic self is in constant motion because it's constantly moving away from that emptiness. The resilient self can go right into that emptiness because it sees neither green or red. Okay, it sees source. Okay.
So Troy, I'm curious here, what would then be a pathetic self connected to essence? Is it just the resilient self or is it a different thing?
I would prefer to look at it this way, that we're not eliminating pathetic self, but it's one and the same, two sides of the same coin, like hot and cold. It doesn't have to be in opposition to itself, meaning I must be in control. I can't let that resilient self take control because I'll lose control, right? Put it more in the dream state of being complementary, where it's actually the same side of itself, but it's flipping its functions. Okay? I'm in motion and I'm identifying. Okay, I can experience fear and threat, but then I act on the fears and the threats through my resilient self. Okay, I'm flipping my function. If the resilient self sees the lion in the jungle and the lion is showing its teeth and running at it, the resilient self might come and say, oh, give me a hug, give me a hug. It has no sense of danger or safety, right? It in fact is quite naive. Whereas the pathetic self says, no, 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 you don't go near that lion, okay? Let's think this through logically, okay? So, and as I'll show you later, this is how our brain works. These are representing two sides of our brain as well, okay? Okay, does that help clarify a little bit more? We do want that duality, but we want them working in harmony with each other in a complementary fashion, as opposed to being in opposition, either or, okay? All right, yeah.
My question is, how to relate with as above, so below, within and out.
Oh,
and how to unite this all?
This happens in relationships. I will approach my relationship with you from my pathetic self. I'll see your pathetic self, or I'll see your resilient self, and I want that for myself too. I want your resilience for me, okay? We see that red and green represented with each other. I'll show you my red face, I'll show you my green face. You'll show me your red face, you'll show me your green face. When we're green to green, oh, we get along fine. But when we're red to red, we're both a threat to each other, okay? If I show you my green and you're red, you're gonna want my green, or the other way around, I'm gonna want your green, okay?
Yeah, dominance.
Yeah, dominating, yes.
So a different stance would be to see through one's pathetic self.
That's right.
The green.
And appeal to the green, well, actually appeal to the source behind both, okay? That's how we do reconciliation work.
To appeal through to the essence, and by appealing to the essence, the shift happens.
That's right. The shift happens here at the source level essence. If I'm trying to mediate a conflict and I'm only trying to make it green to green, it's still kind of false.
And that's the endowment you create by your own.
It's not catalyzer anymore.
Right, because remember, green at this level is still driven by the red. But when we're doing conflict work, we drop the relationship into source. There's where they can start reconciling and having unity with each other. Then they can go back to the red and green expressions in a more symbiotic fashion.
So how to facilitate two pathetic selves to move both themselves into connecting to essence.
Yeah, it's a completely different approach to conflict work. Yeah. But it's not based upon resolution, because resolution is trying to eliminate the red and make it only green. Okay. And that's
conditioned, yeah.
Yeah, and it's artificial because this is a polarity. Okay.
So going back to your first slide, it's transmutation, not transformation.
Yep. And the transformation happens when we deconstruct this. We'll recognize the patterns, deconstruct it, bring it down to source, then bring it back up so that there is a healthy relationship between pathetic and resilient, so that this gap is not so threatening anymore.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not even there. Okay. There's a free flow amongst these three places. Right. Thanks for those questions. I didn't expect to kind of go into that, but it's true. Good question. How is this working on the fractal level? So this is very important, principle of cause and effect, because there's movement in the polarities and there's cause effect, action reaction. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized, meaning there is no such thing as chance or randomness. And there are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. So this even talks about the function of chaos. And I've described it before in other courses or webinars. Chaos is actually a higher order we have not yet understood. It's an arrangement of cause and effect that may look haphazard and random to us, but we just have not understood the higher order yet. Okay? So, and what we're experiencing is the effect. What we're looking for is, okay, the cause. If you're really looking to transmute, we need to get to the cause. Otherwise, we're just doing effect of effect of effect of effect. And that's where we just go in circles. This is unsustainable transformation when we keep trying to manipulate the effects without addressing the cause, all right? And that's what this primary loop is for. This is the very first thing you learn in EED. Action, response, action, response. For everything that you do as a practitioner has an effect on the client, okay? And for everything the client does, they have an effect on themselves. They also have an effect on you. What we're creating from in every moment with that embodiment loop, remember all the sparks that we develop, it's from, we're always creating from the response. And what we want to do is look at those responses, action, response, notice the rhythm and flow coming from the behavior and energy. That will start revealing patterns. It will start to reveal causes because we start highlighting the effect, open the effect, work backwards to what's the cause. That brings us more and more into source. Then we can start becoming intentional with our cause and intentional with our effects. And this is what makes us a co-creator of ourselves, our relationships, and our reality or our world. That is ultimately where we're going. But at first, we act like victims. No, I'm the victim of my circumstance. Oh, this is happening to me. This is happening to me. And we don't realize, back to the first principle, the all is mind. We are all co-creating. So when we examine our effects, we can start to discover the cause, and then we can shift our mindset so that we bring about a new intentional cause that is congruent with mind, feeling, and action. So this is a constant. Whether you're working with an individual, yourself, or a group, you're looking at action and response. And you must invite the response so that the response is brought into their awareness and their experience. So these two work together. How's that for you?
Good.
Making sense? Not making sense? Go ahead, Yusuf. Yeah.
This slide is a formula for the chaos. And the last part is the asking for response, is the making sense out of it, the acting.
Well, this is a polarity again, and it's creating movement. Action, response, working with both the cause and the effect, whether it's the client causing it or you causing it or anyone causing it, but you're always looking at what's the response.
No,
and yeah,
I'm not talking.
You're creating order out of the chaos, yes.
Yes, I'm not talking from a coach perspective. I'm talking from a human perspective.
Yeah.
And this, by my relationship, I do that. But
Yeah.
the inviting response, it was like some shock for me because I don't know what I'm doing there. I'm aware of what I'm doing there, but I don't know the outcome. And inviting response, the response I get is like, if I'm not so totally aware of it, aware of myself, the response, if I go to my pathetic self to react on the response, is something new formula. But the formula you show me now, it's actually it's the chaos.
Right. So for whatever I do, what's the effect? And I need to become aware of the effect and experience the effect. That's going to have a further effect on me, which then I can decide what's my next action. Because what we're normally doing is saying, my action, another action, another action. I don't accept the effect. I want another action. I don't accept the effect. Another action. I don't accept the effect.
The key is to be aware.
Yes. To be not only aware, but to also experience all the effects of all your actions. to take in all the responses with a simple acceptance and fascination, so that then you can create your next action in flow and in harmony with, as opposed to disconnected from. All right?
That takes time.
It takes time, it takes humility. And this is one of the very first things we teach is, again, in game, I'm not accepting responses. I'm throwing them away and I'm trying to control all the effects. Whereas in dream level, that fluidity, there's a basic level of acceptance and fascination where I'm accepting the effects, which is influencing me, creating the next action, and then there's the next response, and I'm taking that back in with appreciation. There's a flow of acceptance, fascination, and appreciation and enjoyment, which now creates a larger flow of reality, either in relationship with myself, in relationship with others, or the world, or time around me. It is a connected flow as opposed to disconnected flow. And this is what brings us into dream and source, where we're no longer trying to control everything, but we're in co-creative flow with everything.
Again, the container then.
And as a practitioner, you're constantly facilitating this flow so that there are connected responses, okay? So whatever your group does, whatever your client does, you're working from that response in the present moment, as opposed to, oh, I didn't expect that. I don't like it. Try something else, right? You're in an inorganic, disconnected rhythm with your group, your client, etc. Okay, so yeah, that's why it's primary. This really sets up. Am I in game or dream with myself, my clients, my group, my world, time, whatever, all right? This is very, very, very basic. This is why we train repetitions, Meisner repetitions. It's to get you in that action response flow. You were going to say something there?
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Yusuf. I keep interrupting.
No,
go ahead.
I mean natively. You should practice it till it get natively.
Yeah, we want this to be an innate, natural habit. All right. That doesn't mean we stop judgment. It just means we don't act constantly from judgment.
Yeah, self-management.
Right. There's a self-management or a self-discipline to allow yourself to judge, but then before acting on the judgment, become fascinated, accept what's happening and become fascinated with it. So you can draw information from it. And then act accordingly.
I want to take the chance here to raise a question whether we are starting as a child already with an intact action response loop, and are we losing it, or do we have to learn it?
What is it like to have childlike awe and wonder and curiosity?
Essence.
A child is coming from essence, from innocence. They're very highly receptive. They're highly accepting. Oh, that's what you can tell a child anything in the beginning. You go, oh, wow, okay.
It's not living in the past or the future.
No, very, very, very present. Yeah. Now, as we get more and more civilized, as we learn how to survive in the jungle, we lose connection to that innocence, naivety, gullibility. We develop another part of our brain, which is more critical and cynical, and questions and challenges. Is that really true? That's our judgment factor, but that's what enables us to survive in the wild. So what's happening in our civilized society is it's so much favoring that left side of the brain, the critical thinker, that we're losing the connection to that acceptance, that receptivity. All right, and that's just closing our bubble more and more and more. What we're doing with the EED is we're rebalancing it, and I'll show you that in the next slide when we get to the last principle here. Does that help answer the question there? We do come from innocence. So the seventh is the principle of gender, and this might sound strange to people. It doesn't mean gender like physical male, physical female. That's a representation of the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles, or masculine and feminine energies, or masculine and feminine behaviors. Gender manifests on all planes. What that means is physical gender, there's masculine and feminine movement of emotions, masculine and feminine thought processes, all right? We need to define what do we mean by the essence of masculine and the essence of feminine. And one of the easiest ways is to look at it as send and receive, okay? I'm referring back to this vertical loop. We can charge up this energy from source, but then we can send it out. So charging it up is actually quite a feminine action, or it's a generation of energy, generating within a container, okay? Feminine is about being receptive and generative. Think of the womb. It becomes impregnated and something grows in the womb. It's an increase, amplification of energy. Then, boom, it takes on the masculine aspect and it ejects or sends. That's the masculine principle. And what does it do? It sends in a straight line. Force, structure, straight lines. Phallic, okay? The phallus ejects the life principle, all right? So masculine nature is about sending, feminine is about receiving. And so what we're working with, this flow of resilience, is we're balancing both the send and the receive. So when we're working in relationship, we're sending energy, we're facilitating that is received, it generates something new, and it sends that, and then it is received. And then it generates something new. And this is what helps create unity consciousness in relationship, but it also helps create a resilient relationship with oneself and the world through this very basic masculine feminine principle of send, receive, send, receive. It's one way to describe it. We also can look at the brain, which has masculine feminine aspects to it as well. It has a left side and a right side. So our left brain is linear. It's focused on particles. It's segmented by time, past, present, future. It's critical. It's always in action. It's our judgment. Okay, it's assessing, judging, categorizing. This is masculine energy. Things move in straight lines, angles. It's linear. It's particle oriented. It sees every little dot, boom, 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 and it's going to analyze every little dot, and it's going to act on every little dot. All right. When we switch over to the right side of the brain, it is holistic. It sees everything within a whole spacious container. It is not logical. It is alinear. Why? Because it moves in circles, spirals, and curves. Okay. It has a sense of timelessness, as opposed to time segmented. It's very receptive, it's very accepting, and it generates. So if we are overly active on the left side, we will become very dominating, action-oriented, and very controlling. If we are overactivated on the right, we'll become much more passive, we're easily controlled because we're gullible and naive. So this is like the master and the slave. And in fact, the left side of the brain acts as the guardian for the right side. It is the filter to allow information into the right side. Why? Because the right side will accept anything and everything. In a way, it's like this is the adult and this is the child. It's another metaphor. I'm not saying that this is the adult and the child, but it's another metaphor. Okay? So what we want is a balance here between the two. Both work together, all right? To be holistic and particle. Look, you guys would not be able to read this screen if you were not using left and right brain together. The right brain will just see a whole picture, just a whole picture. of funny shapes and lines and everything. The left brain alone will see one letter at a time, all these little letters, but it can't string them together. So the left and the right work together to see the dots and connect them. Okay, and that's how we can read letters, words, sentences, paragraphs, and read maps. All right, it's through both together. Now, not only that, we have our reptilian brain and our frontal lobe, so to speak. Well, just to simplify it, we've got front and back. This reptilian is the reactivity and the fear-based self. The ego, what we described with the polarity, the self that runs away from the emptiness, away from the danger, from the fear, okay? It's the one that identifies the problems. The frontal lobe is more fluent, it's lucid, it's resilient. It will take time to consider, navigate, think through. It's not necessarily slower, but it's more spacious. This is very quick, fast, and on automatic. This is automatic patterns. This can define new patterns. So we want front and back to work together. So when we've got left brain and back brain, this is how our polarities are working. When we've got front brain and right brain together, this is the resilience and the flow, all right? And what we want is both working together when we have a whole brain activity, okay? Left, right, front, and back. This is why we're not trying to eliminate polarities or pathetic selves. We're reconciling them all together. Then you're opening up a super consciousness where you're able to have access to source while expressing and creating in the terrestrial world. You can create in the jungle. You'll notice fear, feel fears, but you're not driven by it. You can create from it. That's the difference, all right? Then there's a further dimension, bringing that into the whole body so that we start reconciling head, heart, and gut all together, so that we're bringing the self and our ability to be in relationship and our ability to be in an environment from essence, where we are able to take action, we're able to connect through unconditional love, and we're able to overcome fear rather than be driven by fear. If it's the reptilian brain running everything, we'll become selfish, narcissistic, paranoid, or we're going to become dependent and needy, or we're going to become control freaks, all right, when we're disconnected from source, all right? So what we're doing is we're creating brain, heart, body coherence. That's the third dimension. This is what we work on in modules 2, modules 3, and in reconciling conflict and beyond. That's the ideal transmutated self, is to have a balance between all the body centers and a balance within the brain itself. I know we're almost up at the top of the second hour here. Comments, questions here? How you doing here? I'm giving you the whole overview. I mean, this is what we do in all 3 modules in the application courses. Yeah. Comments? Okay. Giving you a few extras, little axioms from the Kybalion to take these principles further. Mind may be transmuted, as well as metals and elements. That's the physical alchemy thing, but what we're looking at is the mental alchemy. Mind may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. So it's really saying all levels. Source, dream, game, story, polarities, okay? Mind permeates all of it. So true Hermetic transmutation is a mental art. This is a discipline. And I'm going to say, it's a mental art, but it's on all levels of mental, emotional, and body level action, all right? So start with your mood or mental state. Start there. To change your mood or mental state, change your vibration. This is why we introduced that vertical loop from the very beginning. because this is what's going to help change a frequency. To destroy an undesirable rate of mental vibration, put into operation the principle of polarity and concentrate on the opposite pole to that which you desire to suppress. Kill out the undesirable by changing its polarity. What we do this in module 2, where we shift endowments, all right? If there's a lack of love, we focus on unconditional love within someone. We endow them with it. That actually starts to change their behavior. Or that's within yourself. All right? Rather than focus on what I'm missing, endow yourself with already possessing the quality. We do this in language in module 3 when we're creating intentional focus. Focus on what is concrete, not what's not there. Okay? We focus on what is here. What is it that we're intending to manifest, as opposed to what am I not? So these are ways of working with this quote. If you're, this is how you neutralize undesirables. You transmute it. You focus on on its opposite. We also do that in conflict. So rhythm may be neutralized by an application of the art of polarization. This is exactly what we're doing in conflict as well. We're meeting one behavior with its opposite, or we're playing the full swing of the polarity, and so it can start neutralizing itself. We do this internally in module 2, where we play through the full swing of the polarity and then try to be both sides at once, which neutralizes it, it collapses it, and it drops you into source. Nothing escapes the principle of cause and effect, but there are many planes of causation, and one may use the laws of the higher to overcome the laws of the lower. This is why we drop into source. Now, I know in the pyramid, it looks like source is at the bottom, but just invert it. And higher and higher planes of existence would be at source, up above. Lower plane would be our story. So it could go story, game, dream, source. We're doing all the transmutation up at the source level, and then bringing that back down onto the earthly level of story and game. There's where you will have a greater effect because you are working with a deeper cause. Questions, comments? How you doing? Is this, it's good? Yeah, okay. I want to find out what's good about it pretty soon here. So just to summarize, everything begins from source. Creation begins from intention. Our intentions create patterns and movement. Our patterns create action, and our actions affect our reality, which affects us in return, right? And everything begins at source. Everything is built on opposites, and opposites are always counterbalancing each other. And that's what's creating the movement. Life is movement. Life is constantly flowing between opposite poles to express a larger spectrum. So this is where when we want to look at opposites as complementary, otherwise we are limiting ourselves to half-truths, limiting our spectrum of experience if we're only favoring one opposite over another. For every action, there is an energy and feeling that drives it, and there's an idea that guides it. This is why we work with that focus loop of awareness experience, along with the cause and effect of action response. Congruency of mind, heart, and body opens access to essence, which is our source of creativity and resilience. Without congruency, we're not going to access anything deeper. For every action, there is a reaction. So whatever has been created has a root cause. So when you look around, you could decide, I like or don't like my reality, but what's better is to think, there's a cause to this. There was an original idea behind all of this. When we start recognizing patterns of reactions, we're able to connect to the cause. And when we're able to drop into the cause or the source, we're able to start reconciling ourselves. Because that's when we stop becoming victims. And when we stop thinking in that polarity of victim persecutor. Because we're able to then be both sides. So transformation can be seen as a purification of intention rather than trying to change reality. That's why I'm calling it transmutation. It's a purification of intention. And then that intention has ripple effects through applied action. Transmutation is a discipline of pure intention combined with congruency of being, thought, feeling, and action, along with applied action. Without action, nothing happens. It stays in the realm of ideas and potential. Action is necessary. We must take action in order to create the ripples. All right. So a clean connection to source purifies our own vibration, and it aligns us with the natural flow of creation so we can act in a more exalted state of a higher human being. That's really the whole purpose of it all. And that takes discipline and practice. What does this leave you with? Comments or takeaways here? I know it's a lot of information. I told you guys at the beginning, it's gonna be a lot. And maybe it isn't. Maybe it's very, very, very simple. Thoughts? Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. I already got 3 or 4 books about the Hermetic Principles, but I actually always stopped after a couple of pages. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely challenging thing to really get it and keep trying to see how all this complexity can be embodied.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm taking with me the part about transformation and transmutation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was new for me today, that you use the term transmutation, and yeah, that's very helpful for me. Thank you.
I'm going to use it more and more. I was using it here and there before, but for me, it just becomes increasingly clear that this is about transmutation. And I think that's what keeps us disciplined and clean, as opposed to trying to meddle and fix. Right? That's transformation creates that association, whereas transmutation, I think, does set up this parameter of, yeah, I'm creating parameters in a container for something to happen, right? I'm a conductor of an orchestra. The orchestra is perfectly capable of playing itself, but as I walk in as the conductor, I bring the orchestra to its most exalted or highest level of creativity and inspiration. But I'm not playing the orchestra. Do you understand? The orchestra plays itself. I'm a conductor, yeah. Benjamin, anything? Mazdak had to leave, yeah. He said, thank you for everything.
Mute. What is my key takeaway? I would say so, the realization of seeing through one's pathetic self to the essence, to unfold the other side of so the resilient self. That's my key takeaway for today.
I think when I'm reflecting on it now, that diagram of source, pathetic, resilient, okay, self, I think that in a way embodies those 7 principles together quite nicely, maybe not perfectly, but everything springs from source, source being the all potential, the all mind. Everything is in vibration and movement, so we're constantly moving between 2 opposites, resilient, pathetic. And there's a gender principle of being receptive, being active, sending, receiving, generating, producing, okay? Internal, external. but everything is vibrating. Even if you look into the phenomenon of cymatics, where you could, you can get a plate, sprinkle some sand on it, and then you play sound through it, and the sand will change into geometric shapes according to the frequency and vibration. So what we're doing is we're tuning into different frequencies, but allowing ourselves to express through the polarities, but at different frequencies. That vertical loop, you know, if you shift that center up and down the body, it's like shifting a frequency. So everything is mind, everything is vibration and frequency, everything works in polarity, everything is in movement, and they're in opposite energies of being receptive and generative, or active and structured, masculine and feminine. So
what I feel is another thing which I appreciated today, especially, is the image of I try to cling to the water, to the energy flow through me myself.
yeah.
By that, I buy the deal of the illusion that I will get something out of it. But that action is basically prohibiting myself from the receptiveness, the very receptiveness that I allow the energy to connect to me.
That's right.
It's just the opposite.
So the connection to source enables us to be resilient, to be able to be receptive. I think in today's world, it's, well, I don't know, maybe I'll disagree with myself. I'm seeing a lot of people become more rigid and closed, but then at the same time, some people are walking around like open books, and they're afraid to take on the masculine energy. So I don't know. But the resilience enables us to open, and the resilience enables us to send from a cleaner place. Now, to put all this together and say, well, how do I do this? How do I? That's what module 1 is for. It's the foundational training of all these principles put together to get the basics of those 3 loops: the primary loop, the focus loop, embodiment loop, and then getting that vertical resilience and starting that send and receive from a clean place, going from story, game, dream, source. You learn all of that in module 1. So we're going to do it December 18th to 20th online, and there will be a practice session on December 29th as a follow-up. And for those listening to the recording, if you're interested to join, use promo code EED Webinars 2020 to get a discount of €200. And you just go to Eventbrite, EED-EU-2020.eventbrite.com to register, or just go to essence-dynamics.com and click on our registration link or registration page. It'll take you to the Eventbrite page. I'm thanking all of you for being here. Those that had to leave early, I'm thanking them as well. And for those of you that hung around to the end, I thank you very much for your time and your patience and your interest. Any questions, contact me, info@essence-dynamics.com. Follow us on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook @EE Dynamics, or visit the website essence-dynamics.com. Now, I don't have 2021 scheduled yet for the next webinars. I have to sit down and work that out. So if any of you have ideas or suggestions for future webinars, email me, give me some suggestions. I'd love to hear from you. And until then, enjoy the final days of the year. And I do encourage you to go read the Kybalion. And if you have read it, reread it now through a different lens, having, you know, seen it through this webinar. So until then, stay happy, stay healthy, be resilient, be brilliant, be radiant, and most of all, enjoy.